We light our chalice flame today, as chalice flames are lit in our brother and sister congregations across the world. And as we do so, we will hear words today from the book of Matthew, words said to have been spoken by Jesus when he taught the crowds from the mountain, a piece known as the Beatitudes. Blessed are the clear in heart, for they see the living presence. Welcome. Welcome to this place today, to the Unitarian meeting house here in Sevenoaks. It's been an amazing week. With other things happening around the world and in personal politics, there are things been happening in the ground around us. We've had snow, we've had rain, we've had hail, and we now, at this moment, have the most astonishing sunshine. And all the way through this, everything is starting to open up once more. The greenness is reappearing everywhere. We've spoken a little in recent weeks, in our Easter service and a couple of others, of how things are starting to emerge. But this week has seen a real rush of things starting to appear. The hawthorn hedge over at the front there, it's green. It's a thicket of green, which it hasn't been for a good few months. And perhaps we reflect today on this greening of our lives, on the greening breath, as you'll hear the phrase later on, coming particularly from Meg Barnhouse and from Hildegard of Bingen. This idea of connecting to nature, of being a part of it, of recognizing the irresistible force that it runs with. This is something that people have grappled with for centuries, for thousands of years. The connection of a breath of life, a breath of God, the breath of being part of all that is. I welcome you to this service today. As we reflect today, this time and this space are yours. I bid you a very warm welcome. Our first hymn today is a song with words and music by the late Shelley Jackson Denham. It's an opening prayer, perhaps. Blessed Spirit of my life. The words will be on your screen.
Strength through stress and strife, help me live.
Our first reading today is by Meg Barnhouse, former Presbyterian minister. She's now the Unitarian Universalist minister, a Unitarian Universalist minister in South Carolina. And this piece is from her collection, Did I Say That Out Loud? And I'm very grateful to Meg for her kind agreement to use her materials in our services. This is a piece called The Greening Breath. My new house has roses blooming all along its southern sunny side. Mama told me roses were hard to grow, so I never tried. But here they are, and I like watching them. A medieval Christian mystic named Hildegard of Bingen wrote, "The breath of the air makes the earth fruitful. Thus the air is the soul of the earth, moistening it, greening it." Watching my roses, I see that greening breath moving up slowly through the stem, sending energy through the tips of the leaves as they uncurl, gathering in what they need from the summer sun. Hildegard of Bingen said, "The soul is a breath of living spirit that with sensitivity permeates the entire body to give it life." Sometimes I wonder if it hurts to bloom. I imagine I'm a rose. Do I love being a bud, all curled around myself, feeling hugged and tight, knowing what's what? I soak up the sun. I'm gently tossed in the warm wind, and suddenly everything starts to loosen up. My petals are letting go. They're moving apart from one another. Do I try to hold on, grab for the edges, keep the changes from happening? Perhaps I think, I don't understand this, but maybe it's what's supposed to happen. I allow the once tight petals to move apart. Does it hurt? Does it cause anxiety? Do I think I'm falling apart, or do I realize that I'm blossoming? The roses seem to accept each stage with grace, but how do we really know? Maybe we just can't hear them screaming. I'm going to try to trust, imagining that whatever is happening is supposed to happen. Maybe this faith is well-founded, or maybe it's not, but I'm going to try it out for a while. The shoot, the stem, the flower, then the seed, all in their own time. I'm just musing, watching the roses, surrendering. May the greening seep into my soul. The words of Meg Barnhouse. Let us come together in a time of prayer. Mysterious Spirit, known by many names, dwelling within the inner secrecies of our being, make us sensitive to your presence and responsive to your promptings. These are the quiet moments when the tumult and the noise of life are hushed, and when the language of our souls comes unmistakably to us. These are the moments of inspiration, when we catch glimpses of the loveliness and the valour that life might be. These are the times when we are touched to wonder and awe and aspiration. May we realise that all such experiences are the witness of your presence within us, the moving of the Spirit within our hearts. May we walk day by day in the light and by the power of these special hours of insight. When we are tempted to lower our standards and surrender to the second best, or even worse, may some remembrance of these holy hours come upon us and renew our love, our goodness, our faithfulness, our self-control. If you wish to, please join with me in speaking the final prayer. The words will be on your screens. Eternal Spirit, great mystery beyond our ideas, God of many names and none. At this time, in this place, we are grateful for this community of Unitarians, for this virtual gathering of potential. In our hands, we have the opportunity to connect with one another, to strengthen our bonds of friendship and commitment. We know the world in which we live is fragmented, riven with conflict, filled with terror and worry. In our hands, we have the opportunity to create peace, to heal division, to build a better way. Yet the world in which we live is beautiful too. It is a place where goodness can thrive, where life is bountiful, from where we are nourished. In our hands, we have the opportunity to hold on to that beauty, to protect it from damage, to help preserve it for future generations. Great Spirit of life, let us be the builders of the future. May we be generous and caring, honest and compassionate, with unconditional love for all in need. In our hands lies the future. May our hearts and our minds join with them in making this world a better place. Amen. Our second reading is by Francis Younghusband. He was a Victorian explorer, military man, one of those amazing heroic figures that you imagine boys and girls hearing tales of daring do. Often such explorers had very religious reasons for their exploration and their missionary activity. But from this piece by Francis Younghusband, I get the impression he was not so fixed in his approach to religion and spiritual matters. We'll hear quite a bit more about him later on. However, here's the reading. This is Agents in the Creative Process. It was written in the 1930s. If people are to be happy and contented, the needs of the soul must be satisfied, for the soul has its appetites as well as the body. The soul craves for love, and for something more than human love. It craves for beauty, and for more than earthly beauty. It is inappeasable in its devouring thirst for deepening truth about itself and the surroundings in which it is placed. Only when the touch comes which will stir it into fullest activity will it be satisfied. We must use the experience of scientists as well as religious leaders, and of religious leaders as well as scientists, of philosophers, poets, musicians. We have much to learn from science, supplemented and underpinned by philosophy. To the immensity of the universe to which we belong, and the infinitesimal minuteness of the parts and the exquisite delicacy in their adjustments, I will only make a passing reference. We cannot really take in that the stars are as numerous as the grains of sand in the Sahara Desert, that the furthest star visible through a telescope is so far distant that the light from it has taken 140 million years to reach the telescope. It's been travelling at the rate of 186,000 miles a second all that time. Nor can we appreciate the minuteness of the atoms with their revolving electrons of which this stupendous whole is composed. The universe is a whole in which all the parts are interrelated and united. To this stupendous whole do we belong. Our close and constant interconnection with this all-inclusive universe is the one great fact upon which we have to focus our attention. It is the most important result obtained by scientific investigation and philosophic thought. Each person is influenced by some power outside and above them, but that power is not outside and above the universe as a whole. It's the motive power of the whole. As such, it is acting in each component part and therefore in each of us. In us, as well as around us and above us, as I am in and around and above each of the million cells of which I am composed. Always, unceasingly, there is reciprocal action between ourselves and the whole with which we are so intimately and indissolubly connected. We are the creatures through whom the creative spirit of the universe carries forward the evolutionary process and creates the world of tomorrow and of millions of years hence. We create not the baseless fabric of a vision which will vanish, not leaving a rack behind. We are a temple of the Spirit, which will last forever. The words of Francis Younghusband. Our second hymn is William Oliver's Life's Great Gifts. It speaks to the wonder of our connection to life. From those words of Francis Younghusband, this part we play in all of this, to the mystery and glory of all that is. It was also sung at our wedding at the Horsham Unitarian Church 20 years ago this week. Life's Great Gifts. The words will be on your screens. Old meeting houses, such as this one, do not have stained glass windows. As I've mentioned before, we have plain glass usually. And it's apparently as much to do with the need to keep the place looking like a house, which our forebears had to do since they were meeting illegally. But it was to look like a house, but also to allow the clear light of reason to flood in upon us all. Well, as I mentioned at the start of our service today, and as you yourselves will have noticed over recent days, you can also tell from the light pouring in through these windows and the sunshine against those gravestones there, really bright. It almost feels as if we've jumped from winter to summer in around 6 days. There was snow on the ground a couple of weeks ago. In some parts of the country there was snow this week. And now look at it. There is a slight chill in the air, but the glory of the sun is at its full springtime strength. And it might be a clear light of reason that's pouring in, but it also allows us to see what's going on out there. Snow and rain and sunshine, and at the time it happens. Never because this is the time it should happen, just when it does happen. Now the view through these windows is changing rapidly. It feels like something on Play School, doesn't it? But this is the rectangular window. The view is forever changing. And the snowdrops came and they went. The daffodils, the glorious blanket of yellow that we've had recently, the daffodils have now turned and drooped and are going. But the hawthorn hedge has now gone green. It's one of my markers for the year. It's been brown and bare for so long that this sudden burst of life has caught me by surprise. There doesn't seem to have been any transition, no slow appearance of buds. It's just happened. Catches me every year. It's wonderful. It's all systems go. And it affects me, and maybe it affects you too. I feel I've been helped to become alive once more. I'm emerging from the winter me. And as we come out of lockdown 2 this week, we find ourselves emerging, blinking into the sunlight, as if emerging from hibernation, an enforced hibernation. We emerge and we see the world around us coming back into life. And this makes me see my world anew. Now it was Pablo Casals, the Spanish cellist, whose works we're hearing twice today. It was Pablo Casals who said, "In music, in the sea, in a flower, in a leaf, in an act of kindness, I see what people call God. In all these things." And this is the call that many see in the natural world right now. The magic, the mystery, the complexity, the uncontrollable, the ever-present, the messy, the all-consuming, within us, without us, part of us, we're part of it, separate, not separate. Is it God? Is it nature? Is it both? Is it the same? You decide. Now in our first reading today, Meg Barnhouse talks of the greening breath. It appears to support the rose and all the plants throughout their life. Now for Meg, the greening breath is a natural force over which the plant has no option but to receive. The rose cannot decide not to open its buds into flowers. So long as the plant is alive, this is something that will always happen. Yet the greening breath is perhaps something to which the plant ultimately surrenders. It recognizes the deep call that this breath, this greening breath, this other phenomenon is giving to the plant. And the plant responds. It allows this breath of life, to breathe life into it. And for Meg, and perhaps for many more, me included, there is a lesson here to allow this other force its space to act, to bring new life. Now in that reading from Meg Barnhouse, what I particularly liked was I love that reference to Hildegard of Bingen. Now Hildegard, or Saint Hildegard as she is now, for she was canonised by Pope Benedict XVI 5 or 6 years ago, she was a German mystic, and she lived mostly in the 12th century, was a composer, a writer, a philosopher, an abbess, an all-round polymath really. And she was a great writer on both science and religion. People sometimes forget that it was the work of the religious and their work to understand God that led to many advances in science. Our own Unitarian, Joseph Priestley, Unitarian minister and discoverer of oxygen, is just one example. But Hildegard was there long before Joseph. And there was a wonderful quote from her in the reading. "The breath of air makes the earth fruitful. Thus the air is the soul of the earth, moistening it, greening it." And for 12th century science, I think that's quite well stated. Hildegard would have observed the importance of the air, of the natural surroundings to sustain and strengthen plant life. Perhaps, although I cannot speak for her, Hildegard could have been suggesting that God moves through the earth with the air. She speaks of the air as the soul, the carrier of divinity. Now, it's an idea that's steeped in religious tradition. In the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament for Christians, which reflects the ideas of those who grappled centuries earlier on how the world might have come into being. And in that book of Genesis, at the very start, the very first moment in the book of Genesis, the start of the Bible, the idea of a wind over the primeval waters bringing life to the planet, the breath of God, the breath of life, perhaps a greening breath, there is a deeper truth in the mystery. And the natural world is a place in which we can witness that mystery of life itself. The magic is there, if only we look for it. Now, our second reading was from a very different source. Sir Francis Younghusband. He was an explorer, a military officer, and he was active as a campaign leader in Tibet in 1904. And we can't claim that his early life was exemplary. He was involved in some fairly terrible actions and beliefs of empire in South Asia and in Kashmir. However, it was during a retreat from Tibet that Sir Francis had a mystical experience. He deserted his evangelical Christian upbringing and became, as his biographer describes, a premature hippie. He initially devised a new religion, which involved the power of cosmic rays. However, he then began to devote much more time to spiritual matters, and ultimately, whilst living along the road in Westerham, he wasn't far from here at all, he was involved in the establishment of the World Congress of Faiths, to bring together different faiths, to spread peace, to form alliances. And the World Congress of Faiths is an organisation much beloved of Unitarians. It's still going strong. Former minister here in Horsham, Richard Bokey, has been a very key member of the World Congress of Faiths for many years. And Sir Francis eventually became what may be described as a religious atheist, and a strong supporter of the notion that all faiths are generally searching for the same thing. Now, in that reading we heard, Sir Francis, he expands on this idea of connectivity. Like Hildegard of Bingen, Francis brings together scientific understandings and religious beliefs as a way to help explain the ways of the world. He talks of the sheer, awesome scale of the universe, of the total size of everything. A claim that there may be as many stars in the universe as there are grains of sand in the desert, and the millions upon millions of cells and then atoms that make up each and every one of us. And he was writing just after the discovery of neutrons in the early 1930s. All this atomic theory, it was all very, very new. It was completely up to date with scientific advances. He recognised the natural world is the most complex and harmonious system we could ever contemplate, and we will probably never grasp the totality of it. Sir Francis suggests that this giant machine of a universe indicates that the actuating power of life is in fact the motive power of everything. this force that acts in each component and therefore in each of us, and importantly, in everything else around us. And he finishes with the following: we are the creatures through whom the creative power of the universe carries forward the evolutionary process and creates the world of tomorrow and of millions of years hence. We are not, for Sir Francis, the creative power itself. Rather, it is acting through us. Now, for me, this creative power, God, if you like, is the same as the greening breath of Meg Barnhouse and the soul of the earth as described by Hildegard of Bingen. This notion of an intangible force that brings life and new creation to each and every one of us. That this force is natural, is just about uncontrollable, is nourishing, and sort of demonstrated in all we see around us, gives us hope that it may be real. However, the notion of such a force is a notion that supports the very Unitarian ideas of God, or the life spirit, or the universe, or the all that is. It's not there for one faith alone. It is there for everything. It's a breath of life that knows no borders, has no preference in the people it nourishes, is available to all. Now I hope that everyone has the opportunity at some point this week to sit outside and celebrate the revival of the natural world. You can even travel slightly further than your back gardens this week to do that. And if you haven't already, I strongly recommend you to find some time to do so. Even if you did, do it again next week as well. And as you sit, take the opportunity to feel the presence of the Spirit upon you in this greening world. You might feel this presence as God. You may feel it as a connection to everything that is happening. Feel it stirring within you, this idea of life, a greening breath. You might just find yourself connected to the natural world. You might feel connected to the whole world, to the all that is. As Meg Barnhouse suggests, just surrender to the presence. Allow the greening to seep into your soul. Watching the greening of our hawthorn hedge this week was a great reminder of the unstoppable power of nature. The breath of life that the plants make their surrender to is perhaps the same breath of life, the same greening spirit that might be available to us too, if only we surrender our souls to it. The grass is not always greener on the other side of the fence. The grass is greener when you allow the Spirit to refresh it, to bring the greening spirit upon it. We are but a temple of the Spirit. The Spirit will last forever. Let us turn now to a time of stillness, a time of reflection. As we settle our bodies, perhaps closing our eyes, focusing on our breath. I shall speak some words, and I shall strike the singing bowl. We'll come together in stillness and quiet together. The stillness will be broken by music as we continue our reflections. As we settle our bodies, closing our eyes, I shall read some words by the Reverend Kristen Harper, minister to the congregation of Barnstable, Massachusetts. Some say the spirit of the wind is in the trees. You can see it, they say, if you close your eyes and stand real still. Some say that the same spirit lives in the hills, forging mountains and plains. I smelled it the other night. Lying in my bed, my window cracked. It crept through the moonlight up under my blanket and wrapped its arms around me. Entering my blood through my skin, I felt alive with an age I had not yet reached, made new again in a form I'd never known. There was forgiveness in that spirit, compassion for my wounds, strength for my weaknesses. It was no miracle, no nirvana. I just closed my eyes and saw the spirit. The spirit in the wind, the spirit in the trees, the spirit that lives in me. Some closing words by the Reverend Joy Atkinson. We are of the stars, the dust of the explosions cast across space. We are of the earth. We breathe and live in the breath of ancient plants and beasts. We are a part of the great circle of humanity, gathered around the fire, the hearth, the altar. May there be peace with us and amongst us, now and forevermore. Amen.